Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, is Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
Her. Like them. That doesn't really work.
Us.
There was a joke in there, but it didn't quite materialize. This is a science fiction movie podcast. We get together, we've watched the movie, we talk about it. It's really quite that simple. And this episode, we are discussing a vote winner every month on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Our $5 and up patrons get to vote between 4 films. We had bug/insect/small creatures as a theme, and the winner was 1954's Them. Them! There's an exclamation mark, so I'm trying to...
Them!
I'm trying to give it a bit of a kick. So... yeah, so this is right in the atomic era. It's the 1950s, and we're dealing with the fallout, the casualty of radiation. Not that this is based on any sort of scientific accuracy by any means, but lo and behold, some ants have become supersized, and that is the premise for the film. I'll just say spoilers in general, I guess. Maybe a while before we get to any real meaty spoilers, but I'll give the warning now, just in case anything slips out as we're going through the early sort of opinion stuff here. So that's basically the gist of it. I mean, to get more specific, we have a police officer who discovers a little girl who's been traumatized, and they find evidence that something big has happened to this family who were traveling through the country. They had a camper, and then a local store also is wrecked, and it's like, what could have done this? And they bring in like an expert, a scientist, and his daughter, and they sort of become the experts in tracking down what's going on, and lo and behold, they find giant ants, and it becomes about containing the nest, and unfortunately, when possible more nests are going to appear, it becomes about finding those. So those are the clear kind of goals and focus of the plot. Tara, well, first of all, had you seen Them before?
Yes, I have. I've watched it. I watched it on TV years and years and years ago, but it's one that stuck with me.
Well, in that case,
it's a monster movie.
How did you feel about it on this viewing?
I still like it. I really like the first half more so than the second half, just because the second half it caused me to fall asleep a couple times, but I did watch it. I did go back and watch it. And it is pretty fun idea. I think that it is sort of based on something that did happen where some flower seeds that were exposed to radiation actually like became enlarged, and it was like a big deal at the time. So it is sort of based on that idea. Like the public could accept it a bit more because that was something that was known.
Okay, based on something tangential that was slightly truthful, I suppose. Okay.
That's where the inspiration came from.
Yeah. Bit of a stretch though. To these ants have become the size of, like, I don't know, cars.
yeah. I think like they were talking about like marigolds would bloom into the size of like a dinner plate or something.
Which would still be a sight, but not as scary.
No, they're quite lovely actually. Yeah.
Not as dangerous, although arguably maybe going up to them still dangerous if there's radiation involved, but not for eating you reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe these flowers got minds of their own now. Maybe they're going to chomp
maybe
you.
Little Shop of Horrors is also an anti H bomb or atomic bomb movie. It's been a long time since I've seen that, and that's a remake also. So was the original one like from the 50s atomic age?
It may have been. I don't know when the original came out, but yeah, the one that most people tend to talk about is the one from the 80s, right?
Yeah, the Frank Oz one.
Yeah. I don't think I had seen this before. I'm pretty sure this was the first time watch. And I enjoyed it. It's just a fun sci-fi B movie from the era where you got a lot of these things. It has all of the positives and all the negatives of most of the movies that I've seen of this era, which is, everyone enjoys that scene in the middle where they have to over-explain the premise. So we have a slideshow as the scientific character just explains to us how ants work. and
Yeah.
what we're looking for. So,
It just becomes a oh, I can't remember his name, but the guy who always narrates nature documentaries.
Attenborough?
Attenborough, yeah.
Attenborough. Such an American.
Oh, why? What do you call him?
Attenborough.
Oh, well, it is a Scottish name, isn't it?
Well, I don't know if it's specifically Scottish, but I know why you're saying that. Because there's another Attenborough who plays one John Hammond, who stars in the film Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
See what I did there? I think I
Yes.
leaned into it. Yeah, okay. Which is also a bit monsters, technically. I mean, they're dinosaurs. They're a bit more. It's weird to say the movie about dinosaurs coming back to life is more scientifically grounded in a way, but
Sure.
only in the sense that dinosaurs did at one time exist. And while it's very debatable how accurate they are, it's the best guess. It was the best guess at the time, right? More information might have popped up since, but it was the best guess. Whereas ants this size, I mean, maybe someone will tell me that maybe back in maybe back in dinosaur times there were ants this size. I don't know. I don't think so, but
I don't think so either, but I don't know. In the movie, they only go back 50 billion years. Or 50 million years, excuse me.
I was going to say 50 billion does predate the dinosaurs.
50 million years.
Yes. Because 65 million years is what I always remember.
Yeah.
Probably because of Jurassic Park, because it was on the poster.
Mm-hmm.
A movie 65 million years in the making.
Yes.
So
I remember.
That was the joke. Yes. But no, it's a fun time. Them is you got practical ants, obviously, which are big puppets, and I think what I like about this movie is that it starts off as kind of a mystery of. I mean, we know it's ants because it's the poster, and like I'm sure the marketing wasn't hiding what it was, but the movie plays it out as wait, something big did this. Like, what could this be? And it's about the investigation. They really play up the detective side of it and sort of trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And I think that's a smart play. I think for me, I would say the movie sags a little bit in the middle, probably around the big because this is the thing when we get to the exposition dump where the scientist, the Englishman, gives his like explanation of ants and talks about what they're doing and how these other nests are going to be dangerous and why we have to do this, otherwise they're going to dominate Earth as the the species, the dominant species of the planet. Like, it doesn't surprise me that's the section that I am kind of the dullest on. But I really felt like most of what he said in that sequence, he'd already kind of said most of it, like gradually over the course of all the scenes. This was like a recap for like the officials in the scene, but for the audience, I felt like you're mostly just recapping things you've already said. There's like maybe one or two small details that came up in this whole section. And the reason why I think it got stronger again towards the end is because it became an investigation again. It became about questioning people, looking for where these nests are. But so it swung back round to kind of what the movie felt like it started off as, which is using clues, talking to witnesses, finding out what's going on. And I think that's where the strength of it lies, because so many movies came out in this time period that are big monsters, attacking people, and it's people screaming at puppets and whatever else. I think this having that detective-y bent on it, I'm sure there's some other ones that do as well, but that kind of gave this its hook to me. Whereas, okay, this is its storytelling hook, as opposed to we just see an ant in the first scene and someone screams and it's about hunting. It's about the army hunting the ants. I was glad that it went a long time before it delved right into that kind of tropey part of it.
I think it has a pretty strong opening scene too. I think the stuff with the little girl is effectively creepy, and when you first hear the noise that the ants are making, like this, I guess it's supposed to be like a psionic thing that they're putting out that it's done using tree frogs. It's a chirpy sound that the ants are making to communicate. I think when you first start to hear that, that's effectively creepy. It's just. I think for the type of movie it is, it's fairly well directed, and it's a strong opening for sure.
Yeah, for the era. Basically, that gets into what I was saying about how it treats like a mystery at the start. So you see this girl who's traumatized and she's not speaking. The detectives see the camper van where there's like a hole in it, but it's a hole that's come from the inside, which does beg the question: how did the aunt get inside the van first to break out of it?
I think he was saying it was ripped open, not from the inside, but like pulling it out. Like I thought he said it was being ripped open.
Because I think because the exact line, I mean, I can't remember the exact words word for word here, but I think the sentiment of the line was this wasn't caved in, it was caved out, which to me implied it was something coming from the inside, which is what it looks like. It looks like something bashed its way out from inside, but that would suggest the ant got inside somehow without.
Or he was like a scientist who was studying ants when the radiation hit.
Yeah.
And the ant just got big inside the case.
I mean, maybe it was smaller when it went in. Maybe it was only like a dog-sized ant when it first went in, and then it increased inside the. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought they were describing it being like ripped open from outside because inside would maybe, like they would go with an explosion, and I think they were trying to rule out explosion.
But yeah, you've got all these little teases, and it's like, okay, the girl's not speaking, their parents are missing. What is going on? So yeah, that mystery plays into it, and it gives us a nice build to actually finally seeing them for the first time. It's not just here's a monster in the first scene and away you go. And I think that build helped out a lot because there's definitely other sci-fi movies of this era where I feel like it does just jump to the money shot a bit too quickly, and as a result, the pacing kind of hurts. It still has some of the problems though of movies of this era. I think the characters are very thin. You know, like a lot of the sci-fi B movies of this era, the characters are, you know, the only thing we have really is a character with an arc who has something to go other than just their job role is probably the main police officer who's in this opening scene because his partner's left to guard a crime scene like in the second or third scene, and he is killed off. It's off screen. We don't get to see it. We just hear kind of the noise and the gunshots, and this cop's killed by the ants, and he feels guilty because he left his partner there, and he has a little bit of guilt. Now, admittedly, it's very thin because he kind of just like you'd almost forget that happened for most of the movie until right towards the end where he kind of gets to play hero and ultimately, and we're in spoilers, I'll give us the warning, ultimately sacrifices himself to save some kids. It's like he finally gets to, like in his own eyes, redeem himself and sort of sacrifice himself for someone else. So it's kind of
he gets the big death too, because he gets like, we actually get to see the mandibles like wrapped around him, throwing him around and stuff. There's no like gore or anything, but for the most part, everybody's killed off screen. Yeah,
he gets him picked up and stuff. But that's what I'm saying. So it's the only character thing in the movie really that's like a proper, like a proper arc, a proper bit of drama. And even then, it's kind of thin because the movie feels like it forgets about it. Like, and it's honestly a little bit weird because I was sort of like, because he's like the uniformed police officer who's on site for all these initial things, and then he helps the FBI agent who comes in, who it felt like it was setting him up to be more the main character. But
definitely.
This uniformed police officer though ends up staying with them to the point where he's like swapped his uniform for a suit, and he's helping him investigate everything for the rest of the movie. And I'm like, why are you still on this? Wouldn't you just like stop being a part of this at a certain point because it's above your pay grade? It was kind of weird.
And it's not like it's a small town; it's Los Angeles that they're in.
Yeah. I mean, they're on the outskirts obviously for the start because they're out in the desert.
If this was the Blob, it's like, okay, they only have like 2 sheriffs in the whole town. You know.
Yeah. Well, does it start in LA though? Is this opening?
No,
stuff?
It starts in New Mexico.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. So I don't think he's actually an LA cop. I think obviously they're in LA for all the climax stuff because that's all in the city. But all the stuff in the first half I think is in New Mexico, which makes sense given that it's I mean,
it's definitely like filmed in Palmdale and called New Mexico. Sure. But like,
I mean, it's a desert, whatever. There's a desert.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't claim it's the Sahara Desert, but you can claim it's another American desert. It's fine.
Yeah, maybe as north as Mojave or something.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's like whatever, but I think that's the closest it gets to having a character thing. Not that there's not character quirks and stuff, because there is a little thing just to give them a little bit of personality. But the other characters don't have any drama. They don't have any like weight to them or anything. And yeah. It is what it is. It doesn't necessarily need it, but it's kind of why these movies are still B movies, even though they were we think of them as being these classics that are responsible for influencing a lot of filmmakers that made really important films to us. But I don't think these were regarded. I mean, they're regarded in a mainstream way highly, I'm sure, but like this is coming out in the same year as Seven Samurai, which admittedly, yes, I'm not saying American audiences were seeing Seven Samurai for the most part, but these are not prestigious A-tier films. Like,
no. I think this is like another summer blockbuster movie.
Yeah.
I mean, but before like the term blockbuster came about, but it's just like it's hot. People want to go sit in the movie theater with their loved ones and watch something spooky for an hour and a half.
Yeah, and the so the other characters, as we're talking about characters, we'll stick on them for a bit. So you have Scientist Man, who's like a fat British guy who he's very. He does have a character. He has kind of this. He actually sort of gets so frustrated with having to use like the call signs on the helicopter when he's using the comms. He's so pissed off that he's been told that he has to say over and over and out that he eventually just sort of goes and like.
I haven't seen this movie since I was a kid, but I definitely remembered that whole scene.
Really?
I don't know why that one stuck with me.
Yeah. What stuck out to me though, in terms of being dated though, is that our one female character, the way she's introduced, like made me. I cackled with laughter at just how shameless it is.
Yeah, and the guy, like the love interest, I guess, who sounds a lot like Peter Graves, and I kept thinking, is that Peter Graves? And he has a name that's totally different, but it turns out it's Peter Graves' brother. So that's why they sound so alike. Anyway.
Yeah,
and like he tries to call her doctor and stuff, and she's like, oh, you don't have to call me doctor if it makes you uncomfortable or something, like calling a woman a doctor.
Yeah, well, to go back to their intro, they go and pick up, because she's the daughter of the scientist man, and they're getting off the plane, and she gets stuck like climbing down the ladder, and so our first introduction of her is just her legs. And it cuts back to the FBI man and the policeman, and they're just sort of like going, ooh. Like, it plays it as there's sexy legs coming down the plane. And then when she's introduced herself as a doctor and they walk off, FBI man turns to the police guy and says, hey, if she's the sort of doctor that cures sick people, I think I'm coming down with something. And it plays it as I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But she's also one of the guys because she's ready to go into action.
Oh,
she's not afraid of ants.
Not without a fight, though. Remember what he says to her when she tries to go with them out of the nest?
What was the first one? No.
What they say to her is, she's like, because like, why are you all dressed up? She's like, well, I'm coming with you. And she's like, no, you're not. This is no place for any woman, and something else to that effect. It was like really just
usual. Yeah.
It was like a debate because she's a woman, she can't go down there. And her argument is, well, my father's too physically incapable because he's old and fat and can't climb and shit. So I he's a scientist. She's someone who knows what they're looking for down there, which is me. So I'm coming. The sad part is though, is that I feel like after this, her character is
just nothing.
Yeah, like there's nothing else with her after this, really. Because you said love interest, and I agree that it feels that they're setting them up to be love interests for each other, but they kind of don't do anything with it after that.
No, not really.
But they basically have, you can just call me, Pam or whatever, or no, Pat. It was Patricia. Pat. It's like, oh, I'd like to, Pat. It's like, that's okay. And then that was kind of it, basically. Like there wasn't much after that.
You don't have to call me doctor if it makes you uncomfortable calling a woman a doctor.
Doctor? Don't be ridiculous.
Yeah. I think I did read in the trivia that this movie had like the studio didn't have very much confidence in it, so like they kept cutting the budget. Like it was supposed to originally, the big ending was supposed to happen at like the Santa Monica Pier, but that was too expensive. And then it was supposed to be made in color, but like 2 days before shooting, like they cut that. And there were supposed to be some scenes in 3D, but they cut that. That's why you get like flamethrowers to the camera and stuff like that. Scenes that were obviously set up for 3D. And I think, I don't know, I think maybe the ants look better because it's black and white. Because they look fine, but I think I would have liked it in color. I think it would have been more interesting to look at and just an interesting movie. we don't get a lot of, color sci-fi films from this time.
What's interesting to me about this is that the opening title is in color, right?
Yeah.
So it starts black and white, then it's a black and white movie. Obviously, it's filmed in black and white, and part of that is because black and white film is cheaper. Although by the time you get to the mid-50s, most bigger film, Hitchcock had switched to color by this point, with the obvious exception of Psycho, which was later, but that was a choice. That was like a specific choice to shoot that in black and white for artistic reasons. But it was cheaper to shoot in black and white, and obviously you're not shooting to add, because the title them is in red, and I thought that was kind of weird because I don't think I've ever seen that before in an old black and white movie. And it makes sense though, because you don't have to shoot it; you're just coloring it. It doesn't. I don't think it costs that much to add the color onto just the text that you're at, because you have to add the text in anyway. And it made me think though, and maybe someone out there will know this, but I presume that back in the day when movie theaters switched to be able to project color, I assume that they had to get new projectors. I assume that the old projectors only did black and white, and I was wondering if, because it was probably like an expensive process, like switching the projectors out, I was wondering if like movie theaters, because a fair amount of black and white was still coming out and there was a certain amount of color movies coming out, I was wondering that if theaters at the time like had screens 1 and 2 would be color, but screens 3 and 4 will be black and white, because there wasn't multiplexes back then. Maybe even 4 screens is too many in this example, but maybe they'd have a designated room or theater for just black and white. And I was wondering if something happened with the stars there. That was weird.
Yeah, I saw that.
We went to warp drive for a second. Engage. Right. So, but I was wondering, does that mean that, because presumably the reason why they let them do this is that if they send this out and they play it in a black and white projector, it's not a big deal. It'll just show up as a dark grey or a black instead of red, and it doesn't affect it. And I don't think you lose anything from this movie if the title's not in red. But I was thinking that a lot of theaters, when they showed this, if they were showing it on theaters that were still just designated as the black and white theaters, they might not, like, audiences might not have gotten the red title. But otherwise, there's no reason not to just throw it in there, because it doesn't, these days it doesn't matter. But
yeah,
I don't know. I know it's such a simple little thing to be thinking about that a lot of audiences.
But it's an odd decision because the whole movie is black and white.
Yeah, but there's no reason why the titles that you're adding in later can't be in color. So it made me think, like, well, why wouldn't more movies do this from the time period? And then I thought, well, maybe because they know that a lot of theaters will show them in black and white anyway, because they'll probably be in black and white only projectors, and that's fine. But at the same
so
time,
you want to
like,
get the right balance if you're not using color.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but a red just shows up as black anyway, or close to black in black and white. So it's like, yeah, you can kind of get away with it. So on the one hand, I understand why more didn't do it, because they knew a lot of theaters wouldn't show. They wouldn't put it into the color projector just for the titles, right? They weren't going to waste their black and white or their color, because a lot of movie theaters back then would have had maybe 2 screens, right? That was probably quite common. So they aren't going to waste their one color screen on a movie that just happens to have a color title at the start, and then the rest of it's in black and white. They're going to put in, it's 1954. What was playing? Rear Window. They're going to put Rear Window into the big colors theater, and then the small black and white theater will play them. Like, that's probably what's going to happen. I mean, they probably come out different times of the year. It's just an example. But hell, even then, at the time, movies didn't come out in the same day everywhere like they do now. They toured. You'd have them in a couple of at their state maybe for a few weeks, and then they'd move on to another state. It wasn't like everything got the movie at the same time. That was something that grew over time, and by the time you get to the 80s and you have multiplexes, and then everywhere started getting movies at the same time and so on. But anyway, that was a bit of a tangent based on just the fact that the title was in red, despite that it was a black and white movie.
It's not something we see every day.
But again, I genuinely started, like, for the rest of those opening titles, I had something to think about, which was nice, because titles can be boring if the music's not interesting.
The music sounded a lot like This Island Earth.
The same era, same style. I'm sure there's a good chance they're both mimicking the same template.
Yeah.
That would surprise me.
Here's just sci-fi sheets of paper.
In the same way with like when you watch Friday the 13th, the first one, you can tell they're just ripping off Psycho. Like, it's like this is just based off the Psycho score.
Yeah, I think I remember that actually.
Yeah, so that would surprise me. Yeah, but so the answer, The ads look good for the time period. I think they look fun.
Mm-hmm. There's never more than 3 on screen because that's all they could build.
Yeah, it's not World War Z style,
No.
like tons of ads crawling around.
And they're pretty slow moving. There's like, moving a couch around a film set.
But that's
with
why
mandibles.
that's why it makes sense to build the film around the mystery and like try to find them, because then you don't have to like show them as much.
Yeah, but I
is
do
it-
like when they like peek out through the, like, they start digging through walls and stuff, and you can see the heads pop out and the sounds they make. Like, I think they do a pretty good job with the monster movie effects.
Oh yeah, no, I like the monster movie effects. And I like the so to go back to just kind of the plot, I guess. Then the start of the movie, we get the destruction. The cops killed. Our main policeman is Peterson. Yeah, Sergeant Peterson. He's like distraught about it, but very quickly he's with the FBI guy. They bring in the scientist, and they look at the foot, because there was a footprint, right? That was the big bit. That was the big clue they had, was there's a footprint, and it's like, oh, what the hell is this? That could be anything. And the scientist is he's like, where was that nuclear bomb testing done? Was that nearby? I feel like that was in the area, wasn't it? It's sure enough.
The main cop, by the way, is plays Brooks in Shawshank Redemption, so you probably recognize his eyebrows.
I can see it. Obviously, he's a much older man in that movie, but
It's the eyebrows that give him away.
I can see it. I think I've seen him in other things from this time period, though, because he seems familiar anyway, just in a general sense.
Yeah, like his younger self seems familiar too.
Yeah, like if I go back to the 50s here on his IMDb, I'm just going to scan it for a second and see if I notice anything that I might have seen. Nothing's sticking out to me, but it wouldn't surprise me. It would surprise me to see a Twilight Zone or something somewhere that I can't place. But yeah, I mean, he's good. He's I think.
Yeah,
I like
he's got the most character.
He's got the most character, but I also think he's much more likable. Partly because of the character, but partly because the FBI guy is just like, here's your handsome leading man, and he's a bit bland because of that. He's bland because he's just typical handsome Hollywood man.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where I stand on those, but they go to where they think the nest might be, or they're in a helicopter at first, and they sort of go looking. No, they go through they put the goggles on first, right, and they go walking through that one area.
Well, yeah, where they found the girl, they have a helicopter. There's like 2 teams. I think the daughter's in the helicopter.
Oh, they're both in
Or the
helicopters.
scientist. Oh yeah, never mind. But there's 2 teams. There's definitely one that's on the ground, and then in the cop cars.
But I think the scene where they find like another footprint, and they actually see the ants for the first time in person. I think that's before the helicopter scene, because that's when they're looking for the nest. So I think, because this is the first time we see them, this is where she almost gets attacked. They have goggles. I laughed at the start of this scene. The doctor, the scientist, is meant to be this expert in his field. He's got PhDs, and he's there. He's top of the class, and the sergeant has to tell him to, oh, those goggles are for your eyes, and he's like, oh yes, that's much better, thank you. I was like,
yeah, and then they're still like all like cockeyed and stuff. He had the cop has to like assist him to like get the goggles on straight as well. Yeah, you're right. That was a funny scene. It's funny, and it's like cutesy funny.
yeah, this is just kind of a little like, you're supposed to be smart. You're supposed to be the smart one.
And like watching the police officer like not tell him he's dumb for doing it and just like helping him out is like a sweet moment for him.
Yeah, he comes across nice enough because of this.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the scenes with the FBI man later on, he comes across another way, actually, because there's a scene later on when they're looking for the nest where a pilot has been held at a psychiatric ward because he claims he saw something.
UFOs?
Well,
Shaped like ants?
they labeled it as UFOs. It was actually flying ants, but that's what it went down in the books as. It went down as he says he's seen a UFO. And they go and question him, basically just for the direction of where they were flying. But on their way out, the doctor who's looking after this guy is like, oh yeah, I think this might be just, there's nothing wrong with him mentally. I think maybe he's lying for publicity or something. And FBI man's like, no, you're going to keep him locked up and just pretend that he's crazy for a while because we don't want this getting out to the public.
How cruel.
I know, it's super, like, all right. I'm kind of rooting for the ants at this point. So
Yeah.
that stuck out to me. But yeah, but you get your classic monster. Because this is the thing, when you go back to the female character being A, sexualized, B, I mean, okay, in its favor, it is making a point of having her be a smart character who is fighting back against everyone assuming that she shouldn't be involved. So
Yeah.
there is something there. I can't just completely villainize the movie. Completely
Yeah, she's
on
not
that.
like, is it Sophia Loren or whoever is in Fantastic Voyage?
Oh yeah, but she's just there to be in the tight costume and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. She has more than that. She has some more progressive elements than that. But at the same time, you kind of feel like our character only exists because they want the first time we see an ant on screen, they want a woman to be in danger because that's the more classic, vulnerable situation.
Yeah.
Is a woman
That's
screaming.
what's on the poster.
Yeah, and the men have to come in and save her with their guns and their flamethrowers and whatever.
Yeah.
And they do actually kill this first ant. They basically, the scientist man's like, hey, they shoot the antenna, it can't function without them, and that's how they kind of take it down. So it's like, okay, they're not indestructible, they can be taken down. It's just a case of there's too many of them and we have to deal with it. But that kind of sets us up from there. And that's when we get the helicopter scenes when they're looking for the nest and they're bickering over the radio and whatnot. But and they go into the net after they flood it with cyanide, I think they said.
Yeah.
Flood it with cyanide.
Is that how you kill insects? You just spray cyanide all over your house?
I mean, to be fair, they do make you leave. Well, they put up a big tent and make you leave, right? So maybe it could be cyanide.
I guess.
I don't know.
Every can of Raid is just a can of spray on cyanide.
Well, I'm going to assume that maybe the bug killing technology has progressed maybe since 1954. Maybe we have better options now than cyanide.
Yeah.
I love the idea though that everything was more extreme because they didn't have the better option. So like back in the 30s, like, how are we going to kill this rat? I've got anthrax in the cupboard. Everything's more extreme. So yeah, they go in. There's a couple of nice little jump scare moments where there's like an ant, or there's a couple of dead ants at first, and then they see some more. They find a chamber though where the eggs were, and it's like, oh wait, the new queens have left, and that's kind of the big thing from that point on.
Yeah, there's 3, I think, that have escaped.
Yeah, one of which. How does the third one die then? Because there's one who actually makes a nest in the LA River, which is obviously the big climax. There's one who dies because it ends up in the water, right? Because there's the whole thing with the boat. Which again, much like the pilot who they're keeping locked up in the hospital, they basically tell this ship who actually saw the giant ants to remain at sea until they're ready to go public, so none of the sailors will blab.
Yeah.
Now you ain't dock. I don't care how many people are injured from giant ants. You're staying out there in the water.
Right. I don't know how the third one died. I guess I missed it. I mean, obviously it was probably off screen, just in a story or something. But
yeah, I can't remember.
But the pilot did say he saw 3 flying UFOs, and I'm pretty sure there were 3 eggs that we looked at. Yeah,
that's probably why not neither of us could remember it, is because it was probably just a line, like a passing line of dialogue. But yeah. So from here, it's kind of like, okay, this is the middle part where I think it sags a little bit, because it is mostly explaining the ants. This is where we get our big scene with the exposition, which is mostly redundant at this point. It's also where we get a lot of this looking for where they are, which I think is good once there's more of a direct case. See, once we get to the point where, okay, so there's a car turned up and there's a dead body in it, but this guy had 2 kids with him. He had these 2 sons. It's okay, so there's missing children who might still be alive, and because
so you can't flood the cave with cyanide.
Yeah, which makes it harder. So that gives him a more difficult task, which is good escalation, right? In a script, you make it more difficult. It's not just as easy as it was the first time.
I like how there's one guy like, shouldn't we just kill the kids?
I mean, is it really worth keeping 2 kids alive for the rest of the human race?
They're in the way.
I mean, to be honest, there's a cold hard logic to are two kids worth the entire human race? I mean,
Yeah.
like, cold hard numbers. I mean,
I'm not willing to make that choice.
You told me before we started that Leonard Nimoy had a cameo in this, and I didn't notice him. But to quote his character, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Yeah, he has a blink and you'll miss him moment. He doesn't even have a line.
I didn't recognize him, but what I said to Tara was that if I heard him speak, I'd have known it was him. But he never had a line.
Oh yeah.
He walks on, he walks off, and
yeah, he reads something silently.
I mean, this is what they saw. This is like what the Star Trek producers, when they were looking for the young Mr. Spock, they saw him.
I bet that guy would be great reading through a blue light trapezoid.
Man, look at the way he's reading off that page. I believe he's reading that.
Yeah.
What an actor! What an actor!
He's a real pro.
Someone get this Nimoy fellow on the phone.
Get this man some ears.
Oh dear. But yeah, this is where the movie picks up for me again, though, is because it's like, okay, they've got a goal, it's a bit more focused, and it's something they can actually look into. Not to say that some of these plot beats aren't a little bit silly or whatever, but like there's like a through line to follow now where it feels like there's a key thing. So like they talk to like the police officers who found the car and the body, and like, hey, was there anyone you arrested that day? Like anyone who might have seen something? They're like, oh yeah, a couple of drunks and a woman who was speeding. And the woman was like, I didn't see anything. I was running. Why were you driving 60 miles per hour? Oh, I spent the night with a sick friend, and well, I don't want his wife to know. It's like, all right, you can go. And the two drunk guys are like, where's the third drunk guy? And it turns out the third drunk guy, who's actually in the hospital because he's always there because of his drunkenness, who they kind of play this guy for laughs because he just kind of yells like silly things constantly. I wasn't super fond of the performance, but he did see some ants and he saw tiny planes, which sounded a bit funny at first, but it turns out to be like a remote control plane that the kids played with. And yeah, so.
Yeah. And we've seen this guy before. He was in The Blob. He was the old man who gets the blob from the stick.
Oh, at the start? Was that him?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Damn, he's got a career. If he had survived...
He's got a career out of being an old man in a monster film.
I already brought up Friday the 13th, but if he had survived until 1980, he'd have been Crazy Ralph, I bet you.
Yeah, probably.
It's got a death curse. Yeah, oh, that's nuts. I didn't realize that was him. So that's cool. But this leads them to the LA River, which I didn't know was a river until like a few years ago when someone told me.
Yeah, the beautiful LA River. So natural.
So someone referred, because I thought I was talking about Terminator 2 or something, right? And I was trying to describe where they're having the chase, right?
It's the LA River.
And someone said, you mean the river? I'm like, and they thought I was dumb for not knowing that was the river. I'm like, what do you mean a river? Where's the water? I mean, I've never seen a river with or without water. It never occurred to me that could be classed as a river.
Yep. All of our water comes from, well, not all of it, but like most of it comes from the mountains in like Northern California. So if they don't get snow, we don't get water.
Was it ever, is it ever like actually like full? Has it ever been full?
Yeah, I've seen like when it rains.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen some water in there.
Wild.
But usually it's just like, yeah, pretty stagnant, maybe a couple of feet across. And of course the whole thing is made of concrete.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's our concrete river, the beautiful Los Angeles River. We gotta get our water from somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's so this realization like 5 years ago when I found out that chase in Terminator 2 this whole time was taking place in a river, was mind blowing to me. But regardless, so it's like, okay, so they're in the tunnels and stuff off the side of the river, the sewer ducts, which I think is actually, I actually think this is a better place for the finale than the what you said. You said it was going to be the pier at first.
Yeah. No, I think it makes sense for ants to burrow underground and to see an opening that looks kind of like an anthill opening.
It also kind of means that the start of their nest, because it's all like tunnel systems anyway that they make, the start of the nest being just the tunnels that are already there. Oh, so it's like an easy job for them. Of course they'd pick this.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense, and it's kind of creepy because those tunnels go a lot of places.
Yeah, we're under the city. It also means there's a lot of different things they can do down there, like because part of this takes place when they eventually find the kids who are alive and they're stuck in like a little trap. They're at like a abandoned station that still has power, so they're able to turn some lights on. So it's like, oh, I mean, it's a bit convenient, but we need light to see things in a movie, so I'm okay with it.
Right.
Yeah. So and we get our main character, Sergeant Pearson, gets to have his big sack again. Why he's still working with the FBI man and walking around in a suit as if he's a detective now, working for the FBI, I don't know. I mean, maybe you could argue that because they don't want the public to know about this, that the cop who knows about
recruited.
this, yeah, he's because he already knows about everything already. It's just easier to include him now instead of roping in more agents who it's more people who might reveal this to someone accidentally.
Sure.
It's the only
but if he
explanation
comes
I've got
from
for
a
you.
small town in New Mexico and then his partner died, then who's going to be left there to sheriff the town he's from?
There was one other cop in the station. He had like a boss.
Okay.
So there's one sole policeman remaining for the small town.
Just working 24-hour shifts for a little bit.
Is it a sheriff in New Mexico?
I don't know.
He didn't look like a sheriff to me, but then again, I'm hardly an expert in the difference between a sheriff and a chief and a commissioner and a whatever all the other variations are, state to state.
I really have no idea.
Yes. See, when I was younger, I thought a state trooper, I thought that was just a road thing. Like that's just like the highway police, because I didn't understand that different states had just completely different terminology for their police.
Yeah.
And I assume that's because the first time I saw something referred to as a state trooper is because it was someone being pulled over on the highway. But I always associated them with that. I never occurred to me they were just regular police in whatever state they were in. But
I don't even know what they're called here in California. I mean, they're highway patrol is what I see the most because I'm on the highways a lot.
Sure.
But I don't know if you refer to them as a trooper.
Well, no, because that's what I'm saying, though. Like, they're state troopers are just regular police in whatever state they call that in. I think LA has a sheriff.
Yeah, we definitely have sheriffs here.
Yeah. Which is funny, because when I think of a sheriff, I think of a small town.
Yeah.
I think of a small town, and I think of a sheriff having like a cowboy-looking hat with a badge on it. That's a sheriff.
Right.
This is what
Well, there's
movies have
plenty
taught
of
me.
desert here. Yeah.
Whereas LA
aviators.
police. Yeah. LA police I think of as just having the dark uniforms.
Yeah. You think of the T-1000?
Yes. Whereas a New York cop I expect to have a white shirt instead of a dark shirt.
Or a horse. Yeah.
Or a horse.
They have cavalry. Yeah, in New York they have like
Oh, sure.
police on. They have cops on horses.
Hi, we have police and horses in Scotland. I've seen that. I don't know why, but they do.
I'm sure we do here too. I just never see them.
Yeah, I don't see them often, but every once in a blue moon you'll see, and then sometimes you'll see some just horse shit just lying on the road.
It's just such a New York thing. Like whenever you
Yes.
see a cop on a horse, it's like, oh, because they're in New York.
Is it because they can ride around the traffic jams on the
Maybe.
horse?
Maybe it's just a Central Park thing.
Yeah, it may just be Central Park. Because I would feel like a motorbike would probably be even better than a horse. Like if you wanted to just dart around the traffic jams if there was an emergency. But
Yeah.
I don't know. What? A lot of tangents in this. This is always a thing with these relatively simple B movies. Is I think we tend to go into tangents a bit more because it's not as deep. And I know someone's gonna be like, yes, but it's the atomic age. It's about the consequences of nuclear, bombs and power and all that jazz. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, it is. And the scientist makes a speech. Obviously, they save the kids. They come in with some flamethrowers. They find the nest where the new queens will come out, and they're like, nope, they're not hatched yet. We're safe. We can burn them. And we end with a little monologue from Scientist Man where he says, when man opened the door into the nuclear age, no one knew what world that would take us to, and blah blah blah, and that's it. Like that's
He's tampered in God's domain.
it's not ultra deep. Obviously, you can kind of make it work in the movie, and that all these consequences are from us messing with nuclear bombs, and as a result, there's consequences to that action, and these answer the consequences. But at the same time, I don't know, like, it's not so deep that I am convinced that it's not just an excuse to have your fun monster movie, as opposed to, like, I mean, sure, the idea came from that story about the flowers being enlarged, and like someone said, hey, that can make a fun movie. I'm not so much sure though. This is like when a movie's made with a really strong message in mind, whereas like we really want to say something about this, as opposed to, oh, this is a good excuse to make a movie about some giant animal.
Right.
Like, maybe it's just differences in era. Maybe they just didn't want to be. It's somehow thinner, but also more heavy-handed than what a modern movie would maybe do with a message like this.
Yeah. I mean, you don't really get a lot of monster movies these days about the atomic age, but
No, of course not.
but if you did, I mean, I suppose we have like Kong versus Godzilla and stuff, but Godzilla versus Kong. But
yeah, you put the right one first.
But they're still more like they're not like awoken because of nuclear age anymore. It's more of like dealing with how humans just disrespect the planet that they're on in general. It tends to be more of an environmental message now.
Yeah, which is totally fine. Yeah, it's hard to say much more, I think, about movies like this. It's not that there's not a lot of nice little touches, right? It's not that there's not good moments for some of the monsters, the characters per se, but they ultimately are a bit thinner. And I think that's ultimately makes them a B movie, right? I think.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the original Blob that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I know we had like some stronger characters in that film, but they tend to pad out like all the other characters. They would have this quirky comic relief thing, or they were just the town sheriff or something. But like it's still fairly equivalent monster movie to me.
Yeah, I would say I like the Blob more because of that, though, because there is characters. And yeah, they're a bit cliched perhaps, but at least there is character. I mean, yeah, sure. I don't buy Steve McQueen as this goody teenager character when he's like 30.
Yeah.
But at least on paper,
trying to smoke a cigarette behind his back in between scenes.
But at least there is character. There is this idea of like, and it's not always perfect. I'm sure we critiqued how they handled some of the character dynamics and what the story was supposed to be. But at least there was an attempt, and there was a feeling that there was a character there. Whereas other than the one character, other than Sergeant Peterson, everyone in this movie is just kind of what they are. I mean, okay, the scientist is a little bit of
dry white toast
of a child at times with his attitude. But for the most part, he's very dry, and everyone else is very dry. There's not a whole lot of personality. What's funny is sometimes we'll get comments in older movies where, like, people who grew up with movies of this era will think we're being too judgmental and be like, what are you talking about? These characters aren't dry. Like, there's so much character. You're just too young. You're too young and millennial to see it. And I'm like, no, like some things about movie making got better over time. And I think the characters in movies like this, people, we've reviewed Alien already, and I always bring up Alien as the movie that said, we can do a movie like this, but it's like prestigious and has characters that are much, not necessarily have big arcs or anything like that, because they don't, but they have a lot more natural chemistry, a lot more of a realistic kind of vibe to them, which owes a lot to even something like Jaws, as obviously that was a shark and not something as fantastical as anything else.
Yeah, but the three main leads, like, you remember them so well because you want them to survive. You just want to hang out with them and sing sea chanties while drinking alcohol.
And it's funny. Oh, hi, Foxy. It's funny to me though, because most of the complaint that a lot of people have about the modern Godzilla movies and King Kong movies, the complaint that comes up more than anything is the humans are a bit shit, right? That comes up even today. And I think it's, to an extent, kind of true all the way back to this era. You can kind of feel the sense that the humans are a bit bland, just not interesting.
We just
for the most
need
part.
somebody there to get to the monsters.
Pretty much. And the ones that I think separate themselves are the ones where they break out of that mold a little bit. And I think this is remembered well because it's got fun effects and because it is a entertaining time, and the characters aren't actively unlikable by any means. But the plot's fun. Like I say, the detective-y mystery side of it, in the first third and the last third, I think are pretty strong and entertaining to watch. But I don't think it's a sci-fi classic. In the same vein that. This is just a couple of years after Day the Earth Stood Still, which is a film with a deep message and is something that tries. And sure, the goofy robot effects don't hold up, but everything else about that film is trying to say something. It feels like it's got a real intent behind it.
Yeah, I agree. That was a really, really strong film. Example of like trying to make the nuclear message out there.
Yeah.
The fear of the atomic age and why it's justified.
Absolutely. And that felt like it was really, because that was really getting at the idea of like us using nuclear weapons against other human beings. It was really about the conflict.
And just the frustration and trusting in our government to make the right decisions.
Yeah, so it felt like it had a lot more weight to it beyond just generally, the atomic energy has caused something.
Yeah.
Which is fun, don't get me wrong. I'm not critiquing, like, movies like this should absolutely exist. I'm glad it exists, but there's a hierarchy. There is a hierarchy, is all I'm really saying. And this is definitely, well, it's a B movie. There's a reason why that phrase exists. Day the Earth Stood Still is an A movie. This is a B movie. And that's okay. That's perfectly okay.
I agree.
So, good stuff. But no, it's a fun time. I guess we're ready to rate it. What would you like to give them?
I do enjoy the movie. I really was surprised how much like stuck with me from when I first saw it as a kid. I do have some issues with it also. You're right, the characters are a bit thin. I do like the character of the police officer. And the scientist, sometimes I like him. But for the most part, like everyone's pretty bland. But I like the creature features. I like the creatures themselves, the ants. I liked you had to use your imagination for a lot of the deaths, but I do appreciate that we got four Wilhelm screams in this.
Do you know what? I didn't notice all of them. I definitely know there's one towards the end when the soldiers are going in after.
There's like one that happens back to back.
There's one towards the end when the soldiers are walking in to the tunnels where a beam just randomly falls on one of the soldiers on the side, and just as it lands, I was like, "Rah!"
Yeah. We get 4 of them in this film, and I appreciate that. So
maybe that's that budget. That's that budget coming back into it, where we can't record more screams. we make
just do the same one, the same stock one that we have. I'm gonna give it a 7.
Yeah, I'll probably give it a 7 as well. I think it has a place in history. It has a lot of fun things going for it. But ultimately, there's a ceiling to this type of B movie, and that's okay. That's not to say that there's not a lot of fun to be had. But it's very campy, of course, and I think you have to enjoy that side of it to get into it.
Yeah.
I will say we never really mentioned when the little girl finally speaks. The scientist gives her because what was it he asked for? Is it acid he asked for? And
to wake her up.
Yeah, but her nurse is like, acid? Is like, oh, just to wake her up, and it's like, but just his request at face value sounds really extreme when he just says, "Hand me some acid."
We've got to wake her up.
But yeah, as soon as she wakes up, she says the title of the movie. She just screams and says, "Them!" and runs into the corner and cries.
It is a kind of a strange title. It's a little bit awkward. Them with exclamation point. Doesn't really say what it is, but and it's kind of awkward for, I think when the little girl says it kind of comes out awkward. But it happens naturally a couple other times in the film where they're talking. I think when they're talking about the footprints, and they'll say like them, they left this or something. I can't remember, but like it
was better
comes
than
out
that.
more natural. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the title is kind of weird in that. Yeah, I agree that on face value it's not that good, but it's kind of because it's such an old movie, because it's become kind of almost a not a meme title, but like people remember people remember there's a movie called Them because it's such a silly sounding title, but
Yeah.
it's so pulpy that it kind of has this vibe to it. It's kind of funny that that Amazon show called Them as well this year, which is a much more serious thing, about this black family moving into a white neighborhood, which would, Compton, and in the 50s, and it's obviously it's a supernatural, but it's got all these like social like themes and commentary going on, and it's used really well in that but it makes more sense in that because it's about like two human groups referring to the others as them, so it comes across with a lot more like sinister like malice in the voice, and it's like
Right.
like there'll be more of them if we don't get rid of the family. The white characters say things like that, but then also the black characters also refer to them as the people who are harassing them, and it almost like takes the word them and so it's like how much meaning that word can have depending on who you are and who you're talking about. Whereas here it's just them, the monsters. It's the pulpy cheesy side of it.
Yeah. It is a bit awkward though.
I will say it's impossible to Google this shit. I hate titles that are hard to Google because it's just one basic word that,
Yeah.
like, I mean, I know that I care about the movie Lucy, but I hate titles like that was just Lucy. Like, you can't search for Lucy. Just
You have to put in the date of the film.
Yeah, 150,000 people are named Lucy. Like, I'm going to get tons of results. It's nonsense.
It's a weird complaint, but yeah, I guess it's valid.
It annoys me. It annoys me. Same with Us. And again, Us is a great title for that movie because it has so much like meaning, like because it's US as well as us, the word. But it just, come on, just like throw another word down or something just to make it an obvious title because it's not enough.
Yeah, you got to use the date. Us 2019.
That sounds right. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I learned that trick too. I'm just saying.
It's an extra step.
They think about this though. They think about searchability. They think about like, that's why the Sci-Fi Channel renamed their channel to SYFY because they wanted something they could completely own, and B something that there would be no confusion when you search that in Google. You're going to go straight to them because that's just what it is. But if you type the classic spelling of sci-fi, you'll get a bunch of things. You'll get a bunch of different sci-fi stuff. So it was a strategic move.
I used to get the Sci-Fi Channel magazine when that was a thing in the 90s.
I remember being excited. I remember when I first got satellite and cable. Cause I had satellite first, I think, and then we switched to cable after a couple of years. But when I first got satellite, I had to say it. I was excited. Like seeing that little Saturn-esque logo in the corner.
Oh yeah,
it was exciting.
Got Mystery Science Theater. Got Lost in Space. A lot of Farscape, and I don't think Babylon 5 was ever on it, but Farscape was. Sometimes you would get Trek, usually original Trek. Yeah, it was a good channel. Lots of Stargate also.
What's funny is that Sci-Fi stopped showing a lot of the things they used to, and the channel in the UK, and I don't watch broadcast TV anymore, but the channel in the UK that now reruns Star Trek and reruns a lot of those shows is actually the horror channel. And the reason for that is because it shows
ours is BBC America.
It shows horror movies at night, right? As you'd expect, but because it can't show like the R-rated content before 9 p.m, it fills its schedule with those TV shows like for the daytime. So you get Star Trek. I think it shows Buffy and Angel as well, which it fits more into the horror than Trek does.
I agree.
But
the Salt Monster was kind of horrific.
Oh dear. Anyway, we're spinning off into tangents here. It's a fun movie. Them is a fun movie. But there is definitely a bigger. I'll just add on here the actor who plays the scientist. Because I recognized him. I recognize him specifically from The Trouble with Harry, the Hitchcock movie, which was like a year or two after this, I think. He's most famous though, and I've never seen this one, but he's most famous for playing Santa in Miracle on 34th Street.
Oh yeah.
The original one, obviously.
Yeah. I think he's the only actor who actually got a Oscar for playing Santa Claus.
That's a really weird specific bit of trivia. Is it?
Yeah.
mainly because I'm like, are you surprised? Like, you expected lots of actors to have Oscars for playing Santa?
No, I didn't expect any. But he has one, and there's
Wait.
so many Santa parts.
Do you think Tim Allen was robbed?
That movie's not bad.
I liked it as a kid. I've not seen it since. I never saw the sequels. The sequels look bad from my
I didn't see the
perspective.
Jack Frost one with Martin Short, I think.
That was the third one,
see
I
that
think.
Yeah, I didn't see that one.
Yeah,
I
because
saw the first two.
Santa needed a nemesis. At least the poster made it look like that anyway. Look, it was a villain.
Yeah, it did. It was like a versus.
Yeah. No, it's just funny because it's obviously just because of the time period, but I forget when I'm watching like an actor in a movie like this who's his age, because he lived till 1959. He was 81 when he passed away. But it's just his birthday or his birth date is like 1877, and I'm like, well, that's so weird. Like, he was born before movies even existed,
and he really had a young daughter.
He did. He was a player.
She was like 20.
He remarried a few times. This is actually his fourth like wife star. Yeah. But it's just funny to me that you don't think about the fact that for a long period there was like everyone was like basically inventing what filmmaking was, and there was actors who were born before filmmaking was a thing. It didn't exist.
Yeah.
When he was born, it didn't even exist until he was in his like 20s, and even then, not really till his 30s or 40s. When we think of like Hollywood and you think of actual feature length movies, you know. And maybe my dates are off a little bit there, but you know, my point remains, regardless of the specific numbers. It's just interesting.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I don't really think about it, but I don't really see a lot of 1877s behind actors' names.
That's true. What's the equivalent for our generation? Twitter?
I suppose. I don't know.
That's what all the Zoomers would be like. You were born before Twitter?
God, I hope that's not the thing that survives.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I think social media in general would count.
I would say internet. I mean, I don't know about you, but I remember a time without internet.
Oh, so do I, but...
like smartphones.
It's a technicality though, because internet did technically exist like in the 80s.
Yeah, just nobody had it.
Yeah. So yeah, I think in terms of the actual like mainstream use of internet, which I would say was more the mid to late 90s when that kind of started to, because it was 2001 when I got internet. So I remember a time without internet, but which you know, for kids growing up now, that'll be like they won't remember a time without it.
Or touch screens, maybe. A time before touch screens.
Yeah. You have to use your hands. It's like a baby's toy.
That's like a baby's toy.
Yeah, we'll get to that trilogy, everyone. Don't worry. There's plans.
Trilogy is cursed.
There's plans. All right, that'll be us. But this one was a little bit more tangenty. Hopefully that wasn't too annoying.
Sorry. We're just a couple friends having a conversation. You guys are with us.
Yeah, that's
hanging out.
That's true. It's also true that, you know, it's a simpler movie that's only 90 minutes. Like, we would have been done probably like 35 minutes in if there was no tangent. And so this is just to ensure you get a bit more random discussion to fill out things a little bit. But that has been Them from 1954. The new vote for patrons it'll be up already because we're recording this like a week or so in advance, so the new vote will definitely be up by the time this goes up. So if you're $5 or more on Patreon, make sure you go over there. But Tara, why don't you tell them about Patreon?
Yeah, if you enjoy our reviews, please check out the Patreon page. It's patreon.com/mildfuzztv. And if you donate as low as $1 per month, you will get access to bonus episodes of The Ace. So if you're looking for your favorite B movie, much less quality than this one, it's probably there or it's on the way. And you can find transfers, some David Carradine stuff, some Garrett Graham movies. All the finest.
Were you listening more than usual there because I was off camera?
Yes. And if you donate $5 per month, you will get access to these episodes one day early, and some other shows you get a week early, and you get to vote. This was a vote winner, so you can help determine what we watch. Yep,
you can do that. As worth mentioning as well, if you're a YouTube viewer, I have started putting the exclusive bonus episodes up on YouTube as well for members. It's a little all the other things you can only get at Patreon, but if you just want the bonus episodes, it's $2 a month to join the channel. But they are behind. They're 2 years behind. I just put up the first one. Judge Dredd just went up on Male Fuzz Movies, which you can access if you become a member.
Ooh, that was a fun one.
Yeah, that's the first one. Yeah, if you go way back, you can see Tara's shorter hair. It's like a whole different era of the show.
Yeah.
But that's just another option for those. Of course, you can simply like, subscribe, comment, all these things to help on YouTube. Ding the bell for notifications as well. Check out the other shows that are on there. Streams After Midnight, the new horror show that kind of goes alongside that, The Sacred Hockey Mask. That just started, so go check out those. Tara does have to pose for the thumbnail, so we're going to do that right now. I expect something pulpy and campy here. Okay, you're it's the 50s. I'm never calling you a doctor, and you're a damsel. 3, 2, 1, pose! Perfect.
There you go.
Oh dear.
What are we doing next week?
I have come unprepared for that question. How dare you? How dare you make me look bad like this? No,
Don't we
we're
have
doing
something in the books?
we're doing the film. Well, there's one of two things we're doing next week. I'll put it this way: do you want the more recent film, or do you want the longer film? And then I'll tell you which one we're doing.
The longer film.
You want to do the longer film? Oh, well, in that case, next week we're doing Blade Runner 2049.
All right.
So yeah, we're doing Blade Runner 2049. We did the first one a while ago. Did that ages ago. The reason why we're doing it is because obviously Dune's coming out this year, so we thought it'd be good this year to do the sci-fi films that Denis Villeneuve has made. So we'll be starting with Blade Runner 2049, and obviously later in the year we'll be doing Arrival, obviously. So those are coming. So look forward to that. But yeah, next week Blade Runner 2049, and also coming in the next couple of weeks, the results of the top 50 vote, which myself and Tara will be revealing. So.
Ooh.
Look forward to that. But yeah, there you go. That is everything. Thank you very much once again for joining us. We always appreciate it. I did not thank the Patreon producers. I forgot to do that, so I'll do that quickly now before we go. It's because I led into Patreon in a weird way because we were talking about a bit of vote winner. Thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Board Now, Al Tradesman, Christopher Moy, David Brown, and Stanley. So thank you, all of you, for being Patreon producers. Thank you. That is the show. That is us. So thank you once again. Check out the recent Patreon bonus episode, actually. It just went up. Starship Troopers 3. Did you mention that in your list? I can't remember.
Nope. Starship Trooper 3 Marauder.
Yes. It was...
Casper Van Diem is back.
It was... not good. So... our episode's great. The movie's not good. The episode's a hit. But the movie's not good. So, thank you very much once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer... ad salsa.
Them.